So as I was just mentioning, there are hearings today in the state of California's ongoing lawsuit against the Trump administration over their decision to federalize National Guard troops and also to call up active duty Marines, some several hundred, to respond to protest activity in and around LA. Can go ahead and put this tear sheet up on the screen. Appeals court has temporarily blocked the initial federal district court judge's ruling to return control of National Guard to California. And joining us now to discuss, we're very fortunate to have the Attorney General of California, Rob Bonta. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
So if you could just bring our audience a little bit up to speed on this lawsuit and what is the basis for this action?
Absolutely. As we know, the weekend before this past one, we saw National Guard troops be brought into Los Angeles by President Trump. When they arrived on Sunday morning, it was to quiet streets. We believe that it was inappropriate for him to deploy military to Los Angeles. The governor and the sheriff's department, LA Police Department, and mutual aid agencies in the surrounding areas had everything under control, and the president has invoked a statute which requires the presence of a rebellion or an invasion or the inability to execute the federal law to be able to deploy the National Guard. None of those things exist, and it just defies credulity to suggest that they do. The law also requires the cooperation and consent of the governor to deploy the National Guard. So the circumstances that are required for the president to deploy the National Guard to Los Angeles weren't present, and we brought a lawsuit on the following Monday. We brought a temporary restraining order the following Tuesday, and on the Thursday following, we had an order from the federal district court judge that said two things. One, that the president violated the federal law and also violated the U.S. Constitution, violating the state's rights of the great state of California. And the president was ordered to return the control of the National Guard to Governor Newsom. The federal government appealed right away to the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit issued what's called an administrative stay. It's procedural while they review the merits. They are going to have a hearing today at noon to consider those merits. It's all on shortened time. It's being done quickly because of the urgency of the matter and the harm that California faces. So we're hoping for a positive ruling today. We believe we will prevail when we sue the Trump administration. It's because we got the receipts, we got the facts, we got the law, and we think we're going to win. And so we're hopeful for a favorable ruling today.
Do you expect this ultimately to end up at the Supreme Court? And if so, are you sort of tailoring your arguments to think through how they could appeal to various of the conservative justices in particular?
We always play the long game, and understand that the first decision might not be the last one, that we do have a federal court system that has an intermediate level of appellate review, and then ultimately the U.S. Supreme Court. Most cases don't get to the U.S. Supreme Court, but this is one that may be of interest to them. Obviously, the state is watching, the nation is watching, the world is watching this issue of militarizing an American city when there's no basis for it, and doing it over the objections of a governor and the mayor of that city. So this one definitely could get to the U.S. Supreme Court. We make our arguments based on what the facts and law are. We realize that different judges may review those arguments and balance them in different ways, but we make the arguments that are appropriate, that are compelling, and we've made them here to the district court judge. We're making them here to the Ninth Circuit, and we think they're going to be compelling at both levels. And if this case gets to the Supreme Court, we think our arguments will be very persuasive and compelling there as well.
So I read through the district court's ruling, and you can correct my details on this if I don't get the legal, intricacies precisely right. But one of the questions at hand here is whether there was a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, which prohibits using the military in most circumstances for domestic law enforcement. If we can put F3 up on the screen. So at the time of that ruling, the judge basically said, listen, we don't really have full information yet. We already have enough to say that this is a problem and we need to go ahead and side with the state of California without actually having all of the information with regard to whether or not there was a violation of Posse Comitatus. Since then, we've seen this video come out showing what appears to be active duty Marines making an arrest of a civilian here. My understanding is this was a man, a U.S. actually veteran, who took a wrong turn in trying to get to a VA appointment. What is your understanding of the way that both the National Guard and the Marines have been used on the ground since they have been, brought into the city of LA?
Well, thank you. It's all evolving, and video like this is showing that evolution, and it's evolving exactly the way we feared and is prohibited by the law of the United States since the late 1800s. As you mentioned, the Posse Comitatus Act, which prohibits and prevents the U.S. military from engaging in civilian law enforcement on American soil. And that means that the military, the Marines here, cannot participate in searches and seizures and detentions and arrests. And if that is what it seems to be, the detention and or arrest of a civilian by the Marines, that seems to be squarely in violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. So the Posse Comitatus Act is in full effect, and the National Guard and the Marines are military entities that are not allowed to participate in civilian law enforcement.
Are you outside of this, the incident I just showed, are you aware of other incidents where either the National Guard or the Marines have been involved in domestic law enforcement activities or making arrests, those sorts of things?
There are some that we've seen. I've seen other video with some examples. Secretary Hegseth posted on social media what appeared to be Marines, maybe National Guard, out in the field, so to speak, with potentially an ICE agent. It was a little unclear what he was trying to suggest. But we believe that the mission of both the National Guard and the Marines is to protect federal property, personnel, and functions. And that includes while protecting a federal building or while out in the field with ICE agents engaged in immigration enforcement, them being a necessary part of those operations and taking part in detentions and arrests, searches, and seizures. And so you're right that the federal Judge Breyer punted for the time being on the Posse Comitatus Act because the facts were not as clear or developed as he may have wanted to see. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to see what the Marines were going to be doing, what the National Guard were going to be doing. And mm-hmm. we're seeing more of that now. So that record is getting more clear, and it's getting clear in a way that is, I think, better for our argument, bad for America, because it means the military is engaged in civilian law enforcement, which is prohibited.
Another thing that is a significant point that you raised, and I think that all Americans need to be aware of, is that the order that President Trump used to federalize the National Guard was not limited either in time or in place. And in fact, since the federalizing of the National Guard in California and sending them into LA, he has escalated rhetoric about blue cities in particular. I want to get your reaction, guys. This is F2 to some of his recent comments in that regard.
I want them to focus on the cities, because the cities are where you really have what's called sanctuary cities, and that's where the people are. I look at New York, I look at Chicago. I mean, you got a really bad governor in Chicago and a bad mayor, but the governor's probably the worst in the country, Pritzker. But I look at how that city has been overrun by criminals, and New York and L.A., look at L.A. L.A., those people weren't from L.A., they weren't from California, most of those people, many of those people. And that's a focus. Biden allowed 21 million people to come into our country. Of that, vast numbers of those people were murderers, killers, people from gangs, people from jails. They emptied their jails out into the U.S. Most of those people are in the cities, all blue cities, all Democrat-run cities, and they think they're going to use them to vote. It's not going to happen.
What is your reaction to his assertions there?
Oh my God, I mean, there's so much in there. It's so shameless, so embarrassing, so divorced from the facts, and all just outrageously politicized, and he just makes it up as he talks. And the crime rates in California are much lower than many of the red states, and murder rates way higher in many of the red states, red cities, and he's trying to portray a fiction and pawn it off on the American people as a truth when it's clearly not. And to so blatantly attack blue city leaders and blue state leaders, he's not a president for all America. He's wants to be president for half or less, and wants to attack transparently and vindictively everyone else in the blue cities. He can't stand the fact that he got absolutely thrashed in the election in California, and that's too much apparently for his fragile ego. So he needs to try to target California. It's just so inappropriate. That's not how leaders lead. It's sophomoric and juvenile. It's like a kid in the White House, unfortunately. But so much lack of truth there. It's just hard to take the man seriously, unfortunately. But it would be laughable if it wasn't so dangerous. And for him to act on this political vengeance tour, this lack of facts, to go after certain cities and states. You're right. The executive order it was for 60 days. It wasn't targeted and surgical to an incident or incidents in LA, and it's nationwide. It's not just for LA. I mean, what is the basis for an executive order nationwide based on a set of incidents that we see? After the Lakers win a championship,
right?
And so it's he's trying to invoke authority that gives him more power. He wants the power, and when there's invasions or emergencies or rebellions or insurrections, he gets more power. So he says those things exist when they don't exist. Clearly, don't exist.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear he's testing the limits of what he can do here, what he can get away with, both in terms of public support and resistance, and in terms of the judicial system. I'm curious if you feel like you've gotten enough support from other Democrats around the country, because to be honest with you, I've been a little bit disappointed in the lack of vocal support and vocal resistance from elected Democrats around the country, especially given the fact, he's directly threatening all blue states, all blue cities, with rolling out the same playbook wherever and whenever he wants to.
We've gotten some really good support on this case, and Democrats are speaking up and out across the nation. I know that there was some concern and views shared like yours, especially as Trump took office on January 20th. But I think there's a good rhythm and a broad organized group of Democrats that are fighting for the rule of law, for democracy. We had Democratic governors through the Governors Association. Every single governor signed on against this deployment of the National Guard. We had Democratic attorneys general write an amicus brief. We had, quite amazingly, retired secretaries of the Army and the Navy, four-star retired admirals and generals who wrote an amicus brief in our favor in support of our position, saying that if the military is ever going to be deployed on American soil, it needs to be rare and serious and legally clear. And they thought that those elements were not present here. So really good support for our case. And I think more broadly speaking, the voice of Democrats is getting louder and louder across the nation.
Last question I have for you. Trump stopped short here of invoking the Insurrection Act. So the legal grounds, of course, that he invoked is what's in dispute in this particular case. If he were to invoke the Insurrection Act, do you feel like you would have a case that you could make, or would it make all of these issues effectively null and void and he could basically do what he wants?
If he invokes the Insurrection Act, we'll see him in court, and confident we can block him. There's no basis for the Insurrection Act. The only reason he's interested in it is because it gives him more power, but the requirements to invoke it are not present. Again, there needs to be an inability to, with the regular forces, the statute says, execute the laws of the federal government. That's just not present. The federal government can execute all the laws it wants. Or there needs to be a deprivation of rights of individuals in the state where the military is being deployed. And that happened back in the 60s when Black Americans were being deprived of their civil rights. That is not present here. So there's no basis for invoking the Insurrection Act. It doesn't mean he won't try, because that's what he does. He gaslights the nation and says a certain set of conditions exist on the ground when they don't, because if those conditions actually existed, which they don't, he would be able to have more power, which is what he really wants. So will he try? He very well may. Are we ready? Absolutely. And will we take him to court and block him? We're confident we can, and that we will.
All right. Well, we're going to be paying close attention to what unfolds in these hearings today. And California Attorney General Rob Bonta, thank you so much for taking some time with us today.
Thanks for having me. Grateful to be with you.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.